you promised yourself, lying here last night, that today would finally be different. The mind that keeps sliding back to its old shape isn't failing you. It's following grooves worn into it long before tonight. The strange part, the harder you force yourself awake to change, the more you may be rehearsing the very pattern you want to leave. Welcome to Psychology for Sleep. So tonight asks nothing of your willpower. It only follows where change is actually built, and lets you rest while we look. You're in the dark hour where the day's effort finally sets down, when nothing waits to be fixed and no promise waits to be kept. Let's follow the change to where it really takes hold. People make a certain promise in the dark, somewhere between the last thought and sleep, that tomorrow something will be different. It feels real because it is real. The wanting is true. But what you reach for is not just a choice. It is a structure, physical pathways in living tissue that hold your patterns in place. Thoughts are not weightless. Each one is a small spark of electricity and chemistry, running along links that grew stronger every time you used them. So one quiet question runs under this whole hour. Why does a sincere promise so rarely last till morning, while the brain keeps reshaping itself around whatever you return to? Tonight we follow that question, gently, with nothing to solve. You know the feeling of bracing yourself, of deciding to simply try harder this time. For a long while, that effort was described as willpower, as if you held a fixed tank of fuel that ran low by evening. Researchers have spent years testing that picture, and the findings have grown less certain than the old story suggested. The idea that willpower drains like a battery has been hard to reproduce cleanly. What seems closer to true is gentler. Your capacity to steer yourself is real. But it works, moment to moment, shaped by rest, by feeling, by the situation around you. The resolve you felt last night was not a lie. It was simply asked to do a job it was never built to do alone. By morning, the promise is often just gone, dissolved into the ordinary motions of the day before you notice. This is not the shape of a weak character. Much of what you do each day runs through circuits that handle the automatic, the routes you take without choosing, the gestures, the reaching for the same things. These loops let the mind rest from constant deciding, which is part of how a brain survives a complicated world. The cost is that a pattern running on its own does not pause to ask whether last night's promise still stands. It simply runs. What feels like failure is closer to physics, a worn channel carrying water the way it always has. Think of a path across a field that you have walked 1,000 times. How the grass lies flat. How your feet find it without looking. Inside the brain, something close to this happens with use. Connections that fire together often grow more efficient, wrapped over time in a fatty sheath that lets signals travel faster along the routes you travel most. Researchers describe this as the brain favoring the path of least resistance, the well-worn way. It means your habits are not lodged in your willpower, but laid into the tissue itself. And it means the old pattern is not pulling you back out of stubbornness. It is simply the smoothest road you have. And the brain, tired, takes the smoothest road. There is a quiet frustration in knowing exactly what to do and still not doing it. You can describe the better choice in perfect detail and then watch yourself drift the other way. Science draws a line here between two kinds of knowing, the kind you can speak aloud, and the kind worn into action over time. Understanding something lives in one set of systems. Doing it lives in another, the ones shaped by repetition rather than insight. This is why a single clear realization, however true, rarely rewires a life by itself. The knowing is the map, the doing is the road, and roads are built slowly, by being traveled, not by being understood. Notice, if you can, how often a single thought returns to you across a day. The same worry, the same image, circling back. Attention works something like a narrow beam of light in a dim room. It can only rest on a little at a time, and whatever it lands on grows vivid while the rest fades. The brain treats what you attend to as what matters, as the thing worth keeping. So the thoughts you revisit are not random visitors. They are the ones your own attention keeps lighting up, again and again, marking them as significant. There is no judgment in this. It is only the beam, doing what a beam does, resting where you keep pointing it. Think of a phrase you have said to yourself so often that it now arrives on its own. Repetition is one of the oldest rules of how a brain learns. Links used together, again and again, tend to grow stronger. So what once took effort begins to run on its own. Scientists hold this loosely, since the brain is more layered than any single rule, and the limits of this change shift across a life. Still, the broad pattern holds. What you rehearse, you make stronger. This is humbling and hopeful at once. The same rule that built the pattern you dislike could, slowly, build a kinder one beside it. There was a time when something you now do without thinking felt impossible. Driving, perhaps, or tying a shoe, or reading these very words. You were not born able. You rewired yourself into it, through hours of clumsy repetition, until the skill sank below conscious effort. Researchers call this experience-dependent change the brain, reshaping its own representation to fit what a life keeps asking of it. The space devoted to a practice skill can grow. The effort it costs can shrink. You have done this many times already, without ever gritting your teeth at a far-off goal. You simply showed up to the doing, repeatedly, and let the change accumulate where you could not watch it. Researchers once studied city drivers who spent years learning a vast maze of streets. By the end, their brains showed measurable differences in a region tied to spatial memory. Scientists read such findings with care. Since the brain is hard to measure and one study is only a window, but the lesson echoes across much research. Long, repeated practice can leave a physical mark, shaping the tissue toward what you do most. Your daily life is quietly sculpting you the same way, whether you mean it or not. The patterns you repeat are not just habits on the surface. Given enough time, they become part of how you are built underneath. Picture the hands of someone who has played an instrument since childhood. Their fingers seem to know the way alone. In people who practice a craft for years, the brain appears to give more of itself to that skill, shifting room toward what gets used. Space follows use. It is a quiet reminder that you are not a fixed thing but a living arrangement, leaning a little more each season toward whatever you keep doing. There is a hard side and a kind side to this. The hard side. It happens with worry and harsh self-talk too. The kind side, it happens just as much with warm attention and patience. A new habit, at the start, feels heavier than the old one. Clumsy, effortful, easy to abandon. This is not a sign that it is wrong for you. Running an established circuit is cheap. Building a new one is costly. The way a fresh trail through brush is harder than a paved road. The early days of any change are the brain doing expensive construction work, while the old, easy road still beckons. Knowing this can soften the discouragement. The friction you feel is not proof of failure. It is the felt sensation of something being built. And like all building, it is hardest at the beginning, before the new way has been walked enough to smooth. By evening, the better choices grow harder, and the old comforts call more loudly. For a long time, this was blamed on a depleted will. But the picture researchers now hold is more situational than that. Your ability to steer yourself rises and falls with sleep, with hunger, with stress, with how much the day has already asked of you. It is shaped powerfully by what surrounds you, what is in reach, what is easy, what the room invites. This matters because it moves the weight off your character and onto your conditions. You are not failing at willpower in the evening. You are a tired animal in an environment that quietly makes the old path the easiest one to take. After a slip, a voice often shows up, sharp, familiar, quick to name you as the problem. It feels like accountability, but the body hears it as a threat. Under self-attack, the alarm systems grow louder, and the parts that allow calm, flexible choice grow quieter. So the harsh inner critic, however well-meaning, tends to shrink the very abilities you would use to change. Researchers who study self-compassion found something almost backward. Being gentle with your own failures often helps you change more than being hard on yourself does. The kindness is not a prize you fail to earn. It is closer to the condition a tired, scared brain needs before it can try again. Somewhere in the long nights, many people arrive at the same aching question: why can't I just change? The phrasing assumes change is a switch, a single act of will, certain to flip if only you wanted it enough. But nothing in the brain works like a switch. Change there is closer to weather shifting, or a riverbank slowly moving, gradual, structural, made of countless small reinforcements rather than one heroic moment. Seen this way, the question loosens. You were not failing to flip a switch that everyone else flips easily. You were asking a slow, physical process to behave like an instant one. The relief in this is quiet but real. You were never as broken as the question made you feel. Close your attention for a moment on an action you have only imagined doing, vividly, in detail. Studies of mental practice have found that imagining a movement activates many of the same circuits as performing it, which is part of why rehearsal in the mind can sharpen a real skill. The brain does not draw a hard border between what you do and what you steadily picture yourself doing. This is a double-edged gift. Replaying a feared failure again and again in the dark, is a kind of rehearsal too, but so is gently returning your attention, in quiet moments, toward the way you would rather move through your days. The mind practices whatever you let it hold. Of everything streaming through you in a single second, only a sliver is ever attended to, and the rest washes past unmarked. Attention seems to act as a kind of gate for learning. What you focus on is far more likely to be strengthened and kept, while the unattended tends to fade. Much of the fine detail of this comes from careful laboratory work, often in animals, so scientists hold the specifics loosely. But the shape of it is steady and old. Your focus is not a passive window. It is closer to a hand, quietly selecting which of the day's countless moments get woven into the structure of who you are becoming. So much of a life runs without any deciding at all. The route home, the reach for the phone, the turn of a familiar mood. It can feel like being on rails. But this automaticity is not a flaw bolted onto you. It is the brain's way of freeing its limited, costly attention for what is new. A mind forced to consciously choose every step would exhaust itself by breakfast. The patterns that run on their own are, in a sense, gifts of efficiency that happen to form around whatever you once repeated. The work of change, then, is rarely about force. It is about gently choosing which new things get repeated often enough to one day run on their own. There is a strange comfort in an old pattern, even one that hurts you. A familiarity that can feel almost like safety. Part of this is that the brain seems to prefer the predictable. What it can anticipate costs it less and alarms it less than the unknown. An old loop, however unwanted, is at least known territory. And the known carries a quiet reassurance the new cannot yet offer. This is why leaving a pattern can stir an unease that has nothing to do with whether the pattern is good for you. The discomfort of the new is not a sign you are going the wrong way. Often, it is only the brain missing the cheapness of the road it knew. Try, right now, not to think of the sound of your own name, and notice how it arrives anyway. There is a well-known idea in psychology that trying to suppress a thought can make it more present, not less, as the mind keeps checking whether the unwanted thing has stayed away. Researchers debate how strong and universal this effect is, so it belongs in the realm of the carefully held rather than the certain. But many people know the feeling firsthand. The harder you push a thought down, the more your attention circles it. And circling, as we have seen, is its own kind of strengthening. Some things loosen only when you stop fighting them directly. There is a difference between wrestling a thought to the ground and quietly turning towards something else. The first keeps your attention locked on what you are trying to leave. The second lets the beam drift, gently, elsewhere, where suppression tends to backfire. Redirection often works with the grain of the mind, rather than against it. You are not pretending the old thought is gone. You are simply declining to feed it your attention, again and again, and letting that attention rest somewhere kinder. This is less a battle than a practice of returning. Soft, unforced, repeated. And because the brain strengthens what attention lands on, the gentlest redirection, done often enough, slowly becomes its own well-worn path. One night's decision, however fierce, cannot lay down a new path by dawn. The brain does not build that fast. The changes that hold a new way in place gather over many repeats, across days and weeks, not hours. This is why so many honest resolutions fall apart. Not because the wanting was false, but because the timeline asked of it was impossible. There is mercy in seeing this. You were never meant to wake up remade. You were meant to return, to point yourself the same gentle way tomorrow and the day after, letting the slow work build under your notice. A path appears not from one crossing, but from the patient many. Anyone who has tried to learn something knows that one long, exhausting push rarely holds as well as a little, often spread across time. Researchers have found again and again that learning spaced out tends to last longer than learning crammed into a single sitting. The brain seems to consolidate better in the gaps, in the returning, than in one heroic effort. This quietly reshapes what change asks of you. It is not a single great act of will, but a rhythm, small, repeated, almost unremarkable returns to the thing you are becoming. The pressure to overhaul yourself in one decisive stroke was never the path. The path was always smaller and slower and far more forgiving than you feared. Step back, and a pattern runs through all of this. The slips were never weakness. They were the visible edge of structure, of pathways doing what pathways do. The trying harder failed so often, not because you lacked resolve, but because force was aimed at the wrong layer. It struck at a switch that does not exist, instead of the slow strengthening that actually shapes you. So the question we opened begins, quietly, to turn. Perhaps the real matter is not how hard you push, but what you keep returning your attention to, and what decides which pattern, in the end, wins. That is the thread the next stretch follows, and it leads somewhere you might not expect, somewhere you are not even awake for. Everything we have touched points the same way. Attention as a beam, repetition as building, redirection over suppression. You shape yourself less by the strength of a single effort, and more by what you come back to, gently, again and again. Returning asks far less of you than forcing does, and yet it is the thing that actually leaves a mark. The mind you will have is being assembled, day by day, out of the places you keep resting your attention. Tonight, you are resting it here, on the possibility that change was always meant to be gentle. So the steering is not the engine. Attention does not power your transformation through sheer effort. It points it, choosing the direction, while some deeper, slower process does the actual building. This reframes the whole tired struggle of self-change. You are trying to be both the steering and the engine, to force, by daylight, will. A construction that runs on entirely different machinery. The next part of this hour follows that machinery to where it lives. Because it turns out the most decisive work of becoming who you want to be does not happen while you strain toward it. It happens later, in the dark, when you have finally stopped trying, which is, perhaps, exactly where you are now. The steering you just heard about is already loosening in you. The beam of attention slackening, no longer pointed hard at anything, no decision left to hold. The question we opened has quietly turned. Maybe the change you wanted was never yours to force into place by will alone. Notice the breath gone slower without your arranging it. Something in you is being tended right now, in the dark, with no instruction needed. Where this hour goes next, nothing asks you to follow with effort. Only drift toward. As the work moves from the daylight straining to the quiet building, let one breath go and let it carry you a little further down. Often it feels as though you simply see the world as it is. But a growing view in neuroscience suggests the brain is less a camera than a forecaster, constantly predicting what is about to happen and checking the incoming senses against its guess. You meet each moment already, leaning toward what you expect of it. This framework is still being worked out, and scientists hold it as a powerful model rather than a settled fact. Yet it reframes something tender about change. If your brain is always predicting, then the expectations you carry about yourself are not idle thoughts. They are part of the material the next moment gets built from, quietly shaping what you are about to perceive. Have you noticed how, once you expect something of a person, you keep finding evidence for it? The predicting mind tends to perceive in line with what it anticipates, filling small gaps with its own forecast and noticing what confirms the guess. This is not a flaw to be ashamed of. It is how a brain makes sense of a flood of ambiguous signals quickly enough to live. But it means the story you expect of yourself can subtly tilt what you notice about yourself. Expect to fail. And the small stumbles grow vivid while the quiet successes pass unmarked. The lens is not neutral. It leans, gently, toward whatever it was already prepared to find. Expecting to fall back can help arrange the fall. When you brace for the old pattern, your attention narrows toward the cues that lead there. The body tenses in its familiar way, step by step. The path you dreaded becomes the easy one again. Researchers describe loops like this, where a belief about an outcome quietly shapes the very thing that produces it. None of this means your struggle is imagined or simply chosen. It means expectation is a thread woven into the cloth, not something apart from it. And a thread, unlike a verdict, can be drawn a different way, slowly, with patience, and without blame. You may have felt your body answer something it only believed was real. Calm arriving before a remedy could work. Ease at a kind word. The placebo response, once dismissed as noise, is now studied as a real effect of expectation on the body, able to shift pain and mood. Though scientists are careful about its limits, inside the predicting brain view, this makes a quiet kind of sense. If the brain forecasts relief, it starts preparing the body for relief. Your beliefs are not weightless passengers. They reach, by paths still being mapped, into the flesh. That is a strange and gentle thing to carry into the dark. In one study, people drank the same milkshake, described two different ways. Their bodies seemed to respond by what they believed they were drinking, not by the calories. In another, hotel workers were simply told their daily cleaning counted as exercise. Over weeks, some health measures shifted, though such findings are debated, and the effects are modest. The researchers suggest that mindset, The frame you place around an act can shape its physical result, at least at the edges. The lesson is held with care, not oversold, but it points the same way as this whole hour. The story you tell about what you do is not separate from what the doing does to you. Think of how differently a racing heart feels when you read it as dread versus when you read it as readiness. The same researchers who studied mindset have explored how the belief you hold about stress itself can shape how stress moves through your body and mind. Told that the body's arousal is harmful, people tend to suffer it. Told that arousal can sharpen and prepare them, they often fare better. Within limits scientists are still measuring. This is not a trick of positive thinking. It is the predicting brain again, preparing the body in line with the meaning you assign. The pounding in your chest is real. The story you wrap around it helps decide what it becomes. The body, it seems, is always quietly listening to the story you tell about your life. Not in any magical sense, but through the slow machinery of expectation, attention, and the chemistry of stress and calm. The narrative you repeat, that you are someone who always fails, or someone slowly finding their way, is not sealed off in thought. It leaks into perception, into posture, into what your brain prepares for next. Scientists are appropriately cautious about how far this reaches. And it is no cure for the hard, material facts of a life. Yet within those limits, the telling matters. You are, in part, narrating the conditions your next moment gets built inside of. The question keeps turning. If the brain forecasts each moment from the stories it holds, and attention strengthens whatever it lands on, then the tale you keep telling about yourself is not just talk. It is closer to material. One of the things your structure gets arranged around. This is no order to think perfectly. That pressure is its own old trap. It only widens the question we follow. The matter was never just how hard you try by day. It is what you keep coming back to. What you keep expecting. What you keep telling. And, as the next turn shows, where all of it finally settles into you, there is a difference between a thought that passes through and one that arrives wrapped in feeling. The emotional ones stay. Memory researchers have long observed that experiences carrying strong feeling tend to be remembered more vividly and held longer than neutral ones, tied to systems in the brain that flag what matters for survival. This is ordinarily a gift. It keeps the meaningful close, but it also means a painful self-story, charged with shame or fear, gets stamped deeper than a calm correction ever could. The feeling is the highlighter. Whatever you experience while moved is marked as worth keeping, which is why the harshest moments about yourself can prove the hardest to set down. Why do the failures seem to shout, while the small wins barely whisper? The mind leans, by old design, toward the negative. It weighs threats, losses, and mistakes more heavily than equal goods. For an animal staying alive, missing a danger once could end everything, while missing a pleasure only disappointed. So the scales were never even. This negativity lean is not a flaw in you. It is ancient equipment, running in a life that no longer needs it tuned so sharp. Seeing this can loosen the grip of the inner ledger. Your slips feel huge, and your steady efforts feel like nothing. But that is the old waiting, not the truth of your worth. There is a certain hour, often past midnight, when the mind has nothing to do and starts to replay what was left unfinished. With no task to hold it, the brain seems to fall into a kind of idling mode, one tied to thinking about the self, going over the past, rehearsing what is ahead. This drifting is not a fault. It may help the mind sort and plan, but alone in the dark, it can circle the unsolved, the talks and choices that never closed. Scientists hold the details of this loosely. Still, it names something you may know well: how an idle mind drifts, almost helplessly, toward whatever is still aching to be settled. An unfinished thing has a way of staying loud. Psychology has long noted how tasks left undone linger in the mind more than those resolved, as if the brain keeps a small light on for whatever is still open. The effect is debated in its details, but the feeling is familiar. An argument with no ending, a fear with no answer, a version of yourself you reached for and missed. These do not simply file themselves away. They stay near the surface, coming back in quiet moments, asking in their wordless way to be closed. Some of what loops at night is not weakness of mind. It is the mind faithfully holding open what the day left undone. Now bring two of these threads together, attention and feeling, and you find the combination that wires deepest. What you focus on tends to be strengthened. What you feel strongly tends to be kept. So a thought you return to often, while moved by it, gets a double mark, lit by attention and stamped by emotion. This is why an old, painful pattern can feel so thoroughly carved into you. It was rehearsed not coldly but with feeling, over and over, in moments that mattered. The same pairing, though, works the other direction. Attention rested gently, with warmth rather than dread, on the way you wish to be, carries that same deepening power, only kinder. So consider what you have been, without meaning to, practicing, not in any gym or at any desk, but in the quiet rehearsals of the mind, the worry returned to, the self-judgment repeated, the feared outcome replayed in feeling. The brain does not ask whether a rehearsal is wanted. It strengthens what is run. This is sobering and freeing in the same breath. Sobering, because so much of the pattern you dislike was built by attention you never knew you were spending. Freeing, because the spending can change. The capacity that deepened the old groove is the very one that, turned gently elsewhere and given time, can begin to lay another beside it. Underneath all of it, the brain is never idle, never finished learning. In every hour, it is being shaped by something, by what you attend to, what you feel, what you repeat. The only open question is what. Not whether you are being formed, but in which direction and by whose hand. Tonight, for once, nothing is being demanded of that hand. And yet the most decisive part of this whole story is still ahead. In the part of the day you usually overlook entirely, because the daylight, it turns out, is only where the choosing happens. The building, the real, structural settling of who you are becoming, waits for somewhere else. The pace has lengthened in you now, the breath farther apart, the thoughts loosening their edges, the room grown softer at its corners. Nothing here is unfinished in a way that needs you tonight. The loops that pulled at you earlier have less to hold on to when no one is feeding them. Let the weight of the day settle a notch lower in the body. And we will keep moving, slowly, toward the quiet place where all of this finally takes hold. There is a strange tiredness in fighting yourself, bracing against a craving, arguing with a thought, straining to hold a line. Often the fight leaves you more tangled than before. Part of why struggle is its own rehearsal. Every push against the pattern keeps your attention fixed hard upon it. And fixed attention, as we saw, makes things stronger. You meant to weaken the thing. Instead, you spent the evening practicing it, dressed up as resistance. This is the quiet paradox of forced change. Willpower aimed straight at the unwanted pattern feeds it. Because the brain does not learn from what you intend. It learns from where you place your focus. Recall the thought you could not stop earlier. How pushing it down only made it circle closer. The harder the suppression, the more the mind seems to monitor for the very thing it is trying to banish. And the monitoring keeps it lit. So the effort and its target become locked together, each feeding the other. Researchers debate the exact reach of this, but the lived shape is plain enough. What you fight, you hold. This is why so much earnest self-improvement curdles into struggle. The person works hardest against the trait that troubles them most, and in working against it, returns to it most often. The grip itself is part of what keeps the grip. So the way through is rarely more force. It is a different kind of touch, where straining against a pattern tends to deepen it, a gentle turning away, declining to feed it, letting attention rest elsewhere. Works with the mind rather than against it. This can feel almost wrong, as though you are not trying hard enough. But trying hard, here, is the error. The shift is from wrestling to redirecting, from clenching to loosening your hold. It asks less effort, not more. And that lessening is not laziness. It is the recognition that the brain you are trying to reshape does not respond to violence done to it. It responds, slowly, to where you keep, softly, returning. Notice what real pressure does to your thinking. The options narrow. You grab the most familiar reaction. Nuance disappears. Under sharp stress, the brain tends to swing toward rigid, habitual responses and away from flexible, careful ones. Stress chemistry favors the old worn circuits over the slower new ones. For an animal in danger, this is wise, since speed beats subtlety, but it means the very strain you feel while forcing change is the state least able to build anything new. You cannot bully a frightened brain into being flexible. The pressure that feels like seriousness is often the thing quietly locking the old pattern in place. So the question turns all the way around. It was never really how hard you can force change while awake. Forcing, we have seen, can rehearse the loop and lock it in through strain. The truer question is this: what are you rehearsing across your days, gently or harshly? And where? And when? Does any of it settle into the structure that holds? Everything so far has been about the choosing, the pointing, the attention. None of it has touched the building yet. And the building, the slow physical work of making a new pattern stick, does not happen in the heat of daytime effort. It waits for the hours you are about to enter. Think of a long stretch of stress and broken sleep in someone trying to change. Nothing seems to stick. The same lessons need learning again and again. There is a reason beyond low spirits. Cortisol, the stress hormone, is helpful in short bursts. But when it stays high too long, it appears to get in the way of laying down new learning. A brain soaking in constant strain is one whose power to settle change is quietly weakened. So the tired, pressured push to remake yourself can undercut itself twice. By rehearsing the struggle, and by flooding the system with the very chemistry that keeps new patterns from setting under threat. The predicting brain turns cautious. When it senses danger, it leans hard on what it already knows. The safe, the rehearsed. Because novelty is a risk a frightened system will not take. This is why people change most easily, not when driven by fear, but when they feel safe enough to try. Plasticity seems to favor a settled nervous system over a scared one. It reframes the whole project. The way is not to terrify yourself into change with stakes and deadlines. It is to lower the alarm until the brain grows willing to build again. Safety is not the prize at the end of change. It is the soil change grows in. Here is the gentleness paradox, stated plainly. The kinder you are with your own stumbling, the lower the inner alarm, and the lower the alarm, the more the flexible, building capacities of the mind come back online. Severity, which feels like the serious path, raises threat and narrows you toward the old reactions. Compassion, which feels like the soft and unserious path, is often the one that actually restores your ability to change. This is not indulgence dressed as wisdom. It is a quiet feature of how a nervous system works. It opens to growth when it feels held, and closes when it feels hunted. Tonight, you are being held, and nothing is hunting you. So picture the difference between the day's striving and the night's quiet work. All day you point, you choose, you attend, you slip and return, the labor of steering. But the steering, however earnest, does not itself lay the new road. Something else does that, and it does it later. When the steering finally stops, the builder we keep circling does not work in the noise and pressure of the waking effort. It waits for the hour the effort ends, for the stillness that is settling over you even now, the most decisive work of becoming. It turns out, is not done by you at all in any active sense. It is done for you, in the dark. And so the whole tired struggle resolves into something almost tender. You are trying to force, by daylight, will. A change whose real construction happens only once the willing ceases. In sleep. In the very letting go that felt like giving up. The slips were structure. The forcing rehearsed the loop. The stress sealed it shut. And the building you longed for was waiting. All along. In the hours you spent unconscious and unaware. The second half of this hour follows the change into that darkness. Into the sleeping brain where the actual reshaping is thought to occur. There is no staying awake for it. In fact, the work begins precisely when you cannot. You just heard that the building waits for the hour your effort ends, and something in you may resist that. The way rest can feel unearned when you have spent so long believing change costs strain. Notice where that bracing sits right now. Perhaps in the jaw, the shoulders, the held breath. You can leave it unargued. Let it be loosened rather than solved. The way a hand opens when it forgets it was closed. The work ahead asks nothing of your effort, only your absence. Let the breath go long, and let yourself begin to leave the steering behind, down into where the quiet building lives. You are drifting now, closer to the edge of sleep. It would be easy to think the brain simply switches off. It does not. The sleeping brain is busy, running work it cannot do while the waking world pulls at it. Far from shutting down, it uses these hours for some of its deepest labor, sorting, strengthening, reshaping what the day left behind. So the rest you sink toward is not an absence. It is a shift into another kind of work, one you do not steer and cannot rush. The day gathered. The night decides what to keep. All night, the brain moves in cycles, rising and falling through stages. Light sleep, the deep, slow wave hours, and the dreaming reach of REM. Each stage seems to add something different to how the day is stored. This is not random churning. It is ordered, repeating, tied to how memory and learning settle. Scientists are still mapping which stage does what, and the picture grows richer each year. But the broad finding holds. Sleep is not one blank stretch. It is a run of chapters, and across them the brain quietly tends to what you carried into the dark. In the deepest part of the night come the slow waves, vast, even rhythms washing across the sleeping brain. One leading idea is that these hours work as a reset, rebalancing links that grew busy and overgrown through the day. The thought, still debated, is that no link can keep strengthening forever, or the brain would flood. So the deep hours may quietly turn the volume back down. Whether or not the full theory holds, the slow waves are real. They line up with deep housekeeping on the very tissue your patterns are written into. You are sinking toward those waves now. By this view, the night is partly about choosing what to keep. As the brain rebalances in deep sleep, the weaker, less used links may quietly fade, while the ones marked as meaningful are spared. It is a kind of nightly editing, pulling signal from the day's noise. The scientists who study this hold the mechanism loosely. Since the brain guards its secrets well, still, the shape of the idea is gentle and worth carrying. You do not keep everything. The night helps decide what stays. Whatever you met with care, whatever mattered, has a better chance of lasting than the 1,000 things that merely passed. So what gets spared in this nightly sorting? Part of the answer is what got marked during the day. The moments flagged by attention and feeling as worth keeping. Researchers describe a kind of tagging, where what carried weight is more likely to be chosen for strengthening when the night does its work. The daytime choosing and the night work are not separate after all. They are two halves of one motion. the day plants the flags. Then, in the deep hours, the brain walks the field and decides which flagged things to make a little more lasting in you. Here is a finding from the study of sleeping brains, mostly in animals, with a strange poetry to it. Through the night, the patterns of the day appear to play again, as if the brain were quietly going over its own recent hours while you dream. In rats, the trace of a path walked by day can fire again in sleep, faster. Scientists are careful about how far this carries into people, where it is harder to watch. But the hint is moving. The sleeping brain comes back, on its own, to what the day held, going over it, deepening it, with no effort from the one asleep. One leading model says a memory is slowly handed from the fast-learning parts of the brain to the longer-lasting stores. Over many nights, the fragile new trace is woven, bit by bit, into the wider cloth of who you already are. This handoff is thought to run partly through that nightly replay, the brain going over the trace until it is stitched firmly into the old. It is not instant. It unfolds across many nights, which is why one sleep rarely finishes the job. The change you are building does not land in one dark stroke. It is carried inward slowly, night after patient night, below all awareness. Consolidation is slow by nature, and that slowness is not a flaw. It is the very thing that makes change last. A pattern threaded carefully into the wider mind, across many nights, holds far better than one forced in a single push. This is the nighttime echo of what the day taught, about spacing, about coming back, little and often, met with care, then handed to the dark to be woven in. That is the rhythm of real change. The wish for a made-over self by morning asked the brain to skip the very step that makes change stick. What feels frustratingly slow is simply the price of keeping. You may have noticed it without naming it. A skill you fought with one day comes easier the next, as if something settled overnight. Studies of learning find that, for some skills, you do better after a night of sleep, the gain arriving in the dark. The brain seems to fold the day's practice into something smoother while you rest. This is plain magic. Free. Every night. The effort you put in by day is not the whole of the learning. Part of it ripens later, untended. In sleep, you went to bed unable and woke a little more able, having done nothing between but let go. The dreaming hours of REM seem to do a certain kind of work, not only with skills and facts, but with feeling. A long-standing idea holds that REM helps process emotion, sorting the day's feelings and folding them into memory with some of their first charge eased. Researchers argue the details, and the picture is far from settled. But many know the experience it describes. You go to sleep raw about something and wake with the memory whole, yet less sharp. The facts kept, the sting softened. The night, in its dreaming, may be tending not just to what you learned, but to what you felt. Think of a grief or a fear that, over many nights, slowly lost its first unbearable edge while losing none of its truth. One idea about REM sleep proposes just this. The dreaming brain may loosen the feeling bound to a memory, keeping the lesson while easing the wound. The evidence is mixed, and the mechanism unsure. So it is held as a maybe, not a promise. Still, it offers a tender way to read the healing power of time. Some of what feels like simply moving on may be the night, again and again. Softly refiling what hurt, keeping the memory, turning down its pain. Here the question begins to close. The change you longed for was being laid down all along, not in the daytime forcing, which only rehearsed the struggle and raised the alarm. It was laid down in the dark, in the deep waves and dreaming hours. After the coming back was done, your part was never to build it by will. Your part was to aim gently, by attention, by what you came back to, and then let go into sleep, where the weaving truly happens. The forcing was aimed at a process that does not answer to force. The night does the building. You aim, softly, and then you rest. Here is a finding from sleep labs that turns this from poetry into something almost practical. In studies of what scientists call targeted reactivation, a sound or scent tied to daytime learning is played softly in deep sleep. The memories linked to that cue tend to be strengthened more than the rest. The effects are modest and still being studied, so they are held with care, but the hint is striking in its gentleness. The night does not strengthen everything alike. It can be tilted, a little, toward what was marked and cued. What you carry to the doorway of sleep may weigh a little more in what it keeps. Consider what acts, across an ordinary day, as the cue, the flag that tells the night what to revisit. In large part, it is what you paid attention to and what you felt something about. Your focus by day is not only the daytime choosing, it may also be the quiet note left for the sleeping brain, the marker it comes back to in the dark. This stitches night and day into one motion, where you rest your attention while awake becomes, in some measure, what the night goes over while you sleep. You leave, without knowing it, the notes the builder works from after you have gone. The gentle meaning of all this settles softly. You shape who you are becoming less by force than by emphasis, by what you keep coming back to, which becomes what the night keeps strengthening. No strain is required, and strain, we saw, can even work against it. The practice is almost embarrassingly mild. Aim, come back, rest. Aim, come back, rest. And the dark, faithful and unhurried, does the rest. This is the opposite of the grim self-overhaul so many wear themselves out attempting. It is closer to tending a garden by choosing where the light falls, than trusting the slow green work that happens when you look away. The dreaming brain seems to do more than rehearse. It connects. In REM, activity ranges wide, and one idea holds that the dreaming mind draws unexpected links across memories, tying the new to the far-off old, sometimes surfacing as the odd logic of dreams. Scientists treat this as a promising sketch, not a proven map, but it suggests the night is not only a vault for keeping, it is also a loom. What you learn today gets threaded into the wider weave of all you are, knotted to older things, made part of the whole. You wake not with a lone new fact, but with it quietly belonging. Many people know the moment of going to bed stuck on a problem and waking with the answer simply there, arrived overnight. Researchers have studied this and found that sleep can favor insight, helping the mind reshape a problem and see what was hidden. The reason is still argued, but the effect is real enough to be seen again and again. The night does not only store, sometimes it rearranges, handing back a fresh angle the evening could not reach. So the old advice to sleep on it is more than comfort. It points to a real power of the resting brain to move what waking effort could not. So the morning can bring a softer version of the self that went to sleep, not because anything was forced, but because the night rewrote the day a little, strengthening some traces, easing others, weaving the whole a little differently into you. Each time a memory is recalled and restored, it can shift a touch. That means the past is not perfectly fixed, but quietly open to editing through this nightly return. The meaning is large and gentle. You are not sentenced to wake as exactly who you were. Across enough nights of soft attention and rest, your own record of yourself is slowly rewritten beneath your notice. If the night does this much, then steady sleep matters as much as the effort of your days. Regular, full rest gives the brain the repeated hours it leans on to settle, to weave, to keep what was marked. Researchers of sleep and learning return to this often. Regular sleep supports new patterns taking hold, while broken, ragged sleep leaves the work half done. It casts a good night's rest as more than recovery. It is the active second half of any change you attempt. The discipline that counts is less about pushing harder by day and more about guarding the dark hours where the building quietly gets done. Consider what is lost when sleep is traded away to try harder. Cut sleep short, and the brain's power to settle learning and stay flexible appears to suffer. The night's work left undone. Studies of sleep loss link it to weaker learning and dimmer plasticity. The very things change leans on. So the common bargain, burning the late hours on yourself, sleeping less to do more, quietly defeats its own aim. You spend the building hours awake and straining, and rob the work of the time it depends on. The exhaustion is not the price of growth. It is closer to the thief of it. Here, maybe, is the missing piece that makes so much failed change make sense. People aimed all their force at the daylight, gripping, striving, judging, while shorting the dark. So they fought the loop hard, raised the alarm that narrows the mind, and starved the night of the hours it builds in. They did everything but the gentle thing that works: aim softly and sleep well. No wonder the patterns held. The whole plan ran against the grain of how a brain actually reshapes itself. The change was lost in the part they neglected, night after sacrificed night, and never won in the part they pushed. So the brain that builds the new you is, in the end, the one you let go of control over. It works in the dark, in your absence, asking only that you aimed it somewhere, then let go into rest. The surrender that felt like giving up turns out to be the doorway, the very thing that lets the building begin. A deep relief is buried here. You are not the lone maker of your own change. Hour after waking hour, you have a partner in the dark, tireless and unasked, that does the structural work. as long as you stop trying to do its job for it. And something is gathering now, across all of this, toward a single quiet idea. The day was for choosing. The night is for building. The force was never the engine. The returning was. And the rest you are sinking into is not the opposite of change, but its hidden second half. The place the real reshaping lives. You can feel it. Perhaps. The way the effort has already left your body. The way nothing in you is straining toward tomorrow anymore. What we have circled all hour is very close now. Almost arrived. And it asks of you nothing at all but to keep drifting toward it. The building runs on its own now. The way a tide comes in without being called. The way the deep waves move through a sleeping brain with no one steering them. Something is gathering toward one idea, that you were never the one forced to make yourself whole, that the work was always going to happen here, in the dark. After you set the direction and let go, you can stop holding the rope. Notice how little is being asked of you in this moment, only your stillness, only your trust. What we have been moving toward all hour is close. Let the breath carry you the last of the way. So let it come fully into view. You set the direction by where you rest your attention, by what you come back to, by the story you let yourself carry. Then the night, in its deep waves and dreaming hours, does the building, weaving what you marked into the structure that holds. Two halves of one motion, the soft daytime aim, the dark nighttime work. Neither alone is enough, and force belongs to neither. This is how a person actually changes, not by gripping harder, but by aiming gently and resting fully, again and again, until the slow weave of many nights makes the new way part of you. Here is what the whole night has shown, piece by quiet piece. The change you longed for was never laid down by the forcing. It was laid down in the sleep that followed the coming back. You aim. By attention, the dark builds. By consolidation, and across enough gentle nights, you become what you kept softly choosing. The willpower story had it almost backward, straining where it might have let go, neglecting the hours that mattered. From here, the facts that remain carry a different weight. We have followed reason as far as it goes. What is left is the quiet truth, the part that asks only to be felt. So the practice, in the end, is the gentlest thing, not a battle, not a clenched resolve, but a returning, bringing your attention, softly and without drama, back toward the way you would rather be. You will drift from it constantly. That drifting is not the failure. The returning is the whole of it. Each quiet return is a flag planted for the night to find. There is nothing to force here. There is only the soft, repeated turning toward, and then the rest that does the rest. It asks so little at any single moment. A small attention here, a gentle choice there, a story told a touch more kindly. These are almost nothing on their own, but the night gathers them, and the nights add up, and the almost nothings become, over time, the shape of a life. You were waiting for a moment large enough to change everything. It was never coming. What was coming, all along, was the slow accumulation of the small, faithful, unremarkable returns. Think of attention as a quiet vote, cast over and over for who you are becoming. Not a single grand decision, but countless small ones, each one tilting the night's work a little further in one direction. You will not win every vote, and that is fine. You only keep casting them, gently, in the direction you mean. The brain tallies them in the dark, and slowly the count begins to show. You are not choosing once. You are choosing softly, again and again, and being shaped by the sun. And the kinder you are while you do it, the better the building goes. Harshness raises the alarm that closes the mind. Gentleness lowers it, and a settled mind is the one that grows. So self-compassion is not a soft indulgence laid over the real work. It is part of the real work, the condition under which a tired, frightened brain becomes willing, again, to change. Be gentle with the one who keeps drifting and returning. That gentleness is not beside the point. It is the point. The rest you sink into now is not laziness, and never was. It is the second half of every change you have ever wanted. The hours where the marked things get woven in, where the day's gentle pointing becomes structure. To sleep well is to do the building, so there is no guilt to carry into the dark. No sense that resting is time stolen from becoming. The resting is the becoming. You are, right now, doing the most decisive work simply by letting go. It comes across many nights, never one. A single dark cannot finish what a life is weaving. The change gathers slowly, night upon night, each one adding a quiet thread, so no single evening is asked to transform you. There is only the long, patient series of them, each doing its small portion. You are somewhere in that series tonight, adding your thread, and tomorrow you will add another. The slowness you once resented is simply the rhythm of something built to last. So you can set the old willpower story down now. It was never about force. It never could be. The straining, the gripping, the harsh accounting of your slips, all of it aimed at the wrong layer, at the daylight, at a switch that does not exist. You change by pointing gently and resting fully. The fight you thought you were meant to win was a fight that was never the way through. You can lay the whole heavy story down, here, in the dark. And those slips, the ones you judged so hard, they were never weakness. They were structure, the visible edge of pathways doing what pathways do. They were the worn road being the worn road. To call them weakness was to misread the physics of your own mind. You were not failing. You were a living thing following its grooves, while the slow work of laying new ones happened, faithfully, in hours you could not see. There was never anything to be ashamed of. There was only this. So the inner critic can soften now. It rose to keep you safe, but its sharpness only raised the alarm that holds you still. There is no arguing with it. You simply let it grow quiet. The way a worried voice settles when the danger it feared turns out not to be there. There is no danger here. There is only you, in the dark, becoming, gently, slowly, without needing to be scolded into it. Let the voice rest. As you are resting, there is a kind of trust being asked of you simply to let the dark do its work. You have pointed the direction. That was your part. And it is done. Now the building belongs to the night, to the deep waves and the dreaming, to the faithful machinery that runs in your absence. Nothing here is yours to watch or push or check. You simply let yourself be gone into sleep and trust that the weaving goes on without you, as it always has. The new pattern is faint at first, a thread among many, barely there. Do not look for it too hard, the way you would not dig up a seed to see if it has grown. Let it be faint. Let it be quiet. The night will strengthen what you keep gently choosing, and one ordinary morning you will notice the new way arrived without your seeing it come. Faintness is not failure. It is how everything that lasts begins, below the surface, before there is anything yet to show. And when you slip, for you will, the slip is not the end of anything. It is simply the next moment from which you return. The whole practice is built out of slipping and returning. So the morning you fall back into the old way is not the proof that you cannot change. It is only one more place to point again, gently, toward where you mean to go. The returning, not the never slipping, was always the path. Begin again, as softly as you can. What matters, then, is not perfection but showing up. The quiet return, repeated, across the unremarkable days. Perfection was another version of the willpower story. Another way to grip too hard and raise the alarm. Let it go too. You will not be flawless at becoming. You only keep coming back. Imperfectly. Gently. Again and again. And let the nights gather your imperfect returns into something that holds. Consistency. Soft and forgiving. Outbuilds perfection every time. Just keep. In your own unpolished way. Showing up. The arc of who you are becoming is long, and most of it is built where you cannot watch. In the dark hours, beneath awareness, you will not feel the change happening night to night. You will only, someday, look back and find that you arrived somewhere, carried by 1,000 small returns and 1,000 quiet nights. The becoming is real. Trust the long arc. It is being built faithfully, in the dark, while you do nothing but gently choose and rest. And so you are being shaped, even now, even as you drift. The day's gentle aim is handed to the night's quiet building. The self you reached for is woven a little more into the self you are. This is who you are becoming while you sleep, not by force, not by strain, but by the soft accumulation of attention and rest. Authoring yourself by sheer will was never the task. You have only to lean, gently, and let the dark do the rest. Feel, if you can, the relief of not having to force anything. For so long you believed becoming meant struggle, and here it turns out the way is ease, pointing softly, resting fully, trusting the night. The whole heavy machinery of self-improvement can fall quiet. There is nothing to push tonight, nothing to win, nothing to prove. There is only the gentle direction, already chosen. And the dark, already at work. Let the relief move through you. You are carrying far more than the task required. So trust the dark. It has been building you your whole life. every night, faithfully. The hours you spent unconscious were never lost time. They were the construction hours, the weaving hours, the quiet keeping. There is nothing to fear in letting go into them now. You are not disappearing into nothing. You are handing yourself to the oldest, gentlest builder you have, the one that works only in your absence, the one that has never once let the night pass without tending to you. There is nothing to fix tonight, nothing to solve, nothing to decide, nothing to force. The pointing is done. The building is not yours to do. So you can lay it all down. The resolutions, the accounting, none of it is needed here. Here there is only the dark, and your breath growing slow, and the quiet work beginning without you. Let the hands unclench. Let the jaw soften. There is, truly, nothing being asked of you now but to rest. And the morning will be a little different, not transformed, not remade, but shifted by a thread, the way every morning quietly is. You will not wake a new person. You will wake the same person, carried one small night further along, with one more gentle return woven in. That is enough. That was always enough. The small difference, repeated across the patient nights, is the only kind of change that ever lasts. Let tomorrow be a little different, and let that be plenty. The nights add up. That is the whole secret, if there is one. That the small, faithful returns and the quiet building hours accumulate, thread by thread, into a life slowly reshaped. No single night does it. All of them, together, do, so you are not behind. And you are not failing. You are simply somewhere along the long accumulation, adding tonight's thread to all the others. Sleep, and let it count. Sleep, and let the sum grow by one more quiet, ordinary, faithful night. You are already changing, not because you forced it tonight, but because you are here, gently pointed somewhere kinder, sinking into the dark where the building happens. The change is not a far-off thing you chase. It is the quiet motion you are inside of right now. This very breath, this letting go, there is no waiting for it, no earning it, no straining toward it. It is already underway, already carrying you, already weaving the day's soft choosing into who you are. You are already, gently, becoming, and the promise you made in the dark last night, it was not broken. It was only kept the wrong way around. You thought it asked for force, and it asked for ease. You thought it asked for a single fierce morning, and it asked for 1,000 gentle nights. The promise was good. The wanting was real. It simply needed a different hand than the one you were using. Softer, slower, more forgiving. Tonight you make it again. And this time you keep it by letting go. The quiet truth was here, all along. Underneath the struggle, change was never the hard thing you believed. It was gentle. It was patient. It was something done mostly in the dark, by a faithful builder, while you rested and trusted and returned. All the years you spent gripping, you were working against a process that only ever answered to softness. You can stop now. You can let the truth be as gentle as it always was. There is nothing left to fight, and there never really was. So let the rest itself be part of the work. To let go is not to abandon your becoming. It is to finish it. To hand the days pointing to the night's building and step away. The deepest thing you can do for who you are becoming right now is simply this: to sleep fully, gently, without guilt. Let go. The dark will keep what you marked. The dark will weave it in. You have done your part, and your part now is only to be gone. You do not force who you are becoming. You only point yourself gently toward what matters, and then let the dark do the building. The slips were never weakness. The struggle was never the way. There was only ever this, a soft and patient choosing, repeated across the quiet nights, and a faithful builder in the dark who asked nothing of you but your rest. So rest. You are already, gently, on your way, and the way, it turns out, was always meant to be this kind. Picture the mind as a dark field at night, where unseen hands are quietly laying new paths through the grass while you sleep, asking nothing of you. Let that same building move through you now. The day's pointing is done, the choosing set down. All that remains is the slow weaving, going on in the dark without your help. Let everything you carried into this hour settle and grow still. The way a field settles once the wind has gone. There was never a force required of you, and there is none now. Only this softening, only this, letting the quiet work begin. For so long you believed that becoming someone new would cost you a fight, that you would be made to grip yourself into a different shape through sheer, exhausting will. And you carried the slips like evidence against yourself, proof of some weakness at your core. But it was never weakness. It was only structure, only a tired mind taking the road it knew, while the real change waited for the dark. Tonight you set the fight down. You pointed yourself, gently, toward what matters. And now you are letting go into the hours that do the building. There is a particular peace in this, the peace of no longer having to force your own becoming, of trusting the faithful work that happens in your absence. You are not behind. You are not failing. You are simply here, in the quiet, becoming the way you were always meant to, softly, slowly, and at rest. There is more here than a single night can hold. The questions this hour opened about the mind and change and the quiet work of the dark. Keep going in the next videos, resting in the description below. They will keep. 2. Whenever you are ready to return to them, the unseen hands go on with their slow work in the dark, the new paths deepening thread by thread, needing nothing from you now. Let your breath lengthen and go quiet, each one a little slower than the last, until it moves on its own and you no longer arrange it. There is nothing left to point toward, nothing left to choose. The choosing is done, and the building belongs to the night. And if the old promise stirs in you, the one you have made so many times before, let it rest too, knowing this time it is being kept by your letting go. You who keep beginning again. The slips were never weakness, and you are already, gently, on your way. where change is built in the quiet, and you rest while it happens. Good night.